Boire Priya Gofen. The Gofen is the wine that brings simcha. And then there is another trick, another way, little harder way, to bring also simcha. And simcha lemailo. And when there is simcha lemailo, then there is always for sure simcha lemato. When there is above a happiness, simcha by Kodesh Baruch Hu, then there is for sure happiness to every person. And this is through getting everybody together. Achdus. ובהסאחדוס הרבים כולם כאחד. When everybody getting together, כאיש אחד בלב אחד, לא יבוצר מהם כל אשר יוזמו. Then everything that you want to achieve, everything that you want to do, it's going to be reachable. It's going to be able to do it through the Achdus. Especially if the Achdus, this is any Achdus, any unity for any reason. Especially if the Achdus is belimud, Fatima is Achdus is belimud. Veisvadus the Avas Israel. Especially if the unity is by learning, for learning, and Isvadus of Avas Israel. אשר עוז נשמע לסבקושו שיהיה בורחנו, אבינו, כולנו כאחד באור פונךו. So when all the children are together, then the father is happy. Then there is a simcha lemailo. And then the simcha comes lemailo, lemato, simchas HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ismach Hashem avaya b'maisov, v'simchas Yisrael, ismach Yisrael b'oisov. So one of the way to bring the brachos and to bring the simcha is through achdus, through unity. And this is one of the purposes of this event today, that we did a Farbregen besimcha, a gathering that bring more unity to the community, more unity between the Rabbonim, more unity between the communities, and that's going to bring more unities in each family, in each house, and more unity in the world, until the unity of Yeh Bayemo Yeh Hashem Echad Ushmoi Echad.
Kehillah avata ve'voideka Elohekai Adonai memeveka Kehillah avata ve'voideka Elohekai Adonai memeveka Kehillah abata ve'ayde beka ayelakai arabai beka. Feel free to join us, everybody, together. Kehillah abata ay 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 abelaikai arai beka ay Kehillah ay ve'aydeka ayelakai arabai beka. Everyone together, let's go. Hey, diddy da 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 da. Hey, diddy da 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 da. Diddy da 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 da. Diddy die 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 diddy die diddy die lie die diddy die lie die lie. Let's go, everybody! Hey, hi die die diddy die hi lie die diddy die lie die lie lie. Hi yo hi hi diddy die diddy die lie lie diddy die hi la 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 la. Hi 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 diddy die diddy die lie lie diddy die hi la 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 la. Die. Barik Silachem Bracha Ad Bli Dai Ad Bli Dai Ad Bli Dai Ad Bli Dai 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 Barik Silachem Bracha Ad Bli Dai Ad Bli Dai Ad Bli Dai Ad Bli Dai 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 Hayat Sheyivlu Siv Seichem Lilai Madai Dai Dai Hayat Sheyivlu Siv Seichem Lilai Madai Dai Dai Hey! Lachem bracha, I believe die, I believe die, I believe die, I believe die, 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 die. Barik say lachem bracha, I believe die, I believe die, I believe die, I believe die. Hayat sheyivlu siv seichem, lilai ma die, die, die. Hayat sheyivlu siv seichem, lilai ma die. Barik say lachem bracha, I believe die, I believe die, I believe die, 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 die. Hey! I believe die, die, die. Hayat sheyivlu siv seichem, lilai ma die, die, die. Hayat sheyivlu siv seichem, lilai ma. I did it, da da da. I did it, da da da. I did it, da 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 la 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 la. I did it, da da da. I did it, da. Everywhere you're still sitting, let's go. Everybody up in your seat. Everyone stand up where you're sitting, just to get some energy in the room. Let's go.
Bruchim aboim b'shem Hashem. Welcome, Arav Agoin, Arav Chosid, Pem Mefik Margoliois. Arav Jacobson, Shmo Yehoilech Lefonov, B'chol HaMedinois, Mehoidu ve'ad Kush. You say #1 USA. We're lucky we got him here. because he's on the way to 100,000 people in Eretz Yisrael, Yutes Kislev Farbregen. He's going to be the main speaker over there. But because we chose Sunday, we're here. Nebuch, we're on Sunday. But the whole week of Yutes Kislev is a special week. But one of the reasons why we did it, because Achdus, since other places also making Farbrengens for Yutes Kislev, so we didn't want to disturb. The idea was to make something that only going to help everybody. So we didn't want to disturb other places that are making some event on Yutes Kislev. So we were mevater, we compromise on the day itself, by boy by yoim, and let other places that are making Farbrengens. Also in my shul, I know there are a lot of shuls over here. There is some places making a small one, a bigger one, in many places. But you see, we compromise on something, and we got something else. We got the Rav Jacobson. Not everybody know Rabbi Jacobson so well like I know him. When he was still Ilui in the yeshiva, when he was young, not everybody knew. We always thought that he's going to be in the future a very big Godel Israel. Always he was masmid and learning Torah and remember everything that he was learning. And I think the main thing is because we have the discussion about it the last few days. What is special about Rabbi Jacobson? What's special about him? I mean, we don't need to... What's so special? There's many people, the chayus that he used to have always, the little chayus, the lachluchis that he had when he explained something, the lachluchis, was little something in his explanation that in the words, when he says one word, it's as something in the Wörter farana chayus, in the Wörter farana chayus. I think this is one of the things that, so every word in his divrei Torah, in his divrei soirus, in his divrei chizuk, in the chidushim, in the lamdonus, and dvorim hayotzim min halev, nichnosim el halev. So if it's come out with the lev, with the lachluchis, then it goes in the lev of other people. So I think for this Unity special event that we do on a special day, in honor of a special day for the Kislev with the Zuv, to have the biggest speaker in the world today, the biggest speaker in the Olam HaTorah today, Rav Jacobson. B'chovid Rav.
You want me to clip this on? Well, I'm a very lucky man. Not everybody gets to hear their eulogy during their own lifetime. Most men have to die to hear somebody say something nice about them. So I could live forever after such an introduction. Somebody once introduced, was at a dinner, Senator Joseph Lieberman from Connecticut, and the master of ceremony was extolling his virtues, like you heard tonight. So he gets up and he says, "It's a pity my parents are not here this evening. My father would have appreciated these words. My mother would have believed them." So, but thank you for your very kind, somewhat dramatic remarks. And I'm really privileged to be here with all of you for this special event of Avas Yisrael, of love and unity. Your community, Marine Park, is known for the fact that it's a unified community. There's so many different types of people and shuls and people from different backgrounds and walks of lives and persuasions. And yet there's a certain sense of camaraderie and unity and brotherhood and sisterhood, which is extremely inspiring. May all the communities learn from Marine Park about people not always necessarily agreeing with each other or wearing the same type of yarmulke or davening the same text or doing everything in the same way. But like we know in every relationship, what matters most is the fact that we can trust each other, we can support each other, we can be here for each other. The Gemara tells a story, the Gemara in Menachos asks a question: if a person is born with two heads, what do you do with tefillin? So Tosfos writes over there that it's not a theoretical scenario, it happened. It tells a story about a young man who had two heads, and they came to Shlomo HaMelech for a court case. Why? Because he had two heads, he says, I'm two people. So when their father died, he wanted a double portion of the inheritance. His father left real estate on Fifth Avenue and Madison Avenue and Second Avenue. He wanted a double portion. Two heads, at least let me get a double portion. So what did Shlomo HaMelech say? Shlomo HaMelech said, blindfold one of the heads and pour cholent on the other one. Hot cholent. If the other head screams, then you know it's one person. He doesn't get a double portion of the inheritance. If the other head doesn't scream, then you know it's two people. He gets a double portion of the inheritance. It's a very strange story. What's the meaning of this? So Rabbi Soloveitchik once said that this is a metaphor for the Jewish people. Because Jews don't have one head. We have multiple heads. 3 Jews, 19 opinions. That's the fact. Every Jew, sometimes every Jew within himself or herself has many heads, right? Depends before the coffee, after the coffee, before yoga, after yoga, before Pilates, after Pilates, before therapy, after therapy, before the vitamins, after the vitamins, right? Before you met your husband, after you meet your husband. People have, even within one person. A Jewish community, I once heard from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe had a very good sense of humor. And he once said, I remember I was at a Farbregen. He said, why is it that in the Jewish tradition, we greet each other, you say Shalom Aleichem, and the response is Aleichem Shalom. Why shouldn't the response be reciprocal? Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem. Imagine in English if I say to you, good evening, and you say evening good. How are you? You are how? What's up? Up what? It's very strange. But in Hebrew, we do it all the time, right? Shalom Aleichem, and you're like, Aleichem Shalom. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe said the reason is because when two Jews meet, even before they begin the conversation, the first thing is they have to disagree with each other. That's the first thing. I say to you, Shalom Aleichem, and you're like, Nez, Aknesh Kenshainik, Ibchem Estabritz, Aleichem Shalom. Once we establish that we have a disagreement, now we know we're both Jewish, nobody has to convert, and indeed we can hopefully have a meaningful dialogue. You know, there was the great Kabbalist Jackie Mason, Olav Shalom. He once said that when two Jews meet, he's the guy who used to repeat my jokes. So he said when two Jews meet, if within 3 minutes they don't establish a family relationship, one of them is not Jewish. Yeah? It's true, right? Whoever I meet, oh, you know my mother's mother-in-law in a previous reincarnation? Of course I know her. I was in Australia when they said, you must know my cousin. He lives in New York. Of course I know your cousin from New York. There's 9 Jews in New York, and I know your cousin. Probably, Afli Davin's right in front of me. He gets me annoyed. First I know your cousin. And my brother-in-law, of course, also is the second guy in New York from the 9 people. But I think it's also fair to say that if 2 Jews meet within a few minutes, there's no disagreement, probably one of them is not Jewish. So Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem Shalom. We don't have one head. We have multiple heads. We have many ways of thinking about things. I remember there was a debate between Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, the Colonel of Rachel, the chief rabbi of Britain, and Amos Oz. Amos Oz was a world-renowned Israeli, real leftist. And before the debate begins, Amos turns to Rabbi Sachs. He says, Rabbi Sachs, I have to be honest with you. Probably I will disagree with everything you say in this debate. Like, it's only a Jewish debater. How do you know what I'm going to say? But I know beforehand I have to disagree with everything you say, of course. So he says, probably I will disagree with everything you say. But I want you to know that I also disagree with everything I say. So we don't have one head. We have many heads. That's not the issue. The problem is not when people have different heads, different perspectives, different way of looking at things. The problem is if I pour hot water on one head and the other head screams, you know it's one person. It's one organism. But if I pour hot water on one head and the other head doesn't scream, it's apathetic, then you have a problem. It's not just two heads, it's two souls, it's two people, it's two separate persons. I don't know if you ever went to San Francisco to see the sequoia trees, the redwoods, but it's fascinating. You have their trees that are almost 4,000 years old, 3,500 years old, 3,800 years old. That means trees that date back before Moshe Rabbeinu. They come from the time of Yosef, of Yaakov, of Yitzchak, of the time of Mesushelach, Noach. I mean, it's incredible. You look at these trees, and it's literally you're touching a different time, a part of history. And when scientists began to study the power of these trees, their longevity, they wanted to understand how did they withstand, how did they weather every storm, every tsunami, every fire forest, bacteria, infections, germs, viruses, how? They were certain that the roots of the sequoias must extend deep, deep, deep into the ground to be able to ensure the longevity of the tree. But when they developed the instruments to be able to view subterranean roots and see what's happening beneath the earth, they were shocked. They were astounded. The sequoias have very shallow roots, some of them 4 or 5 feet. At most, a tree in your garden is deeper, has deeper roots. And they couldn't understand what's its magic. And then they realized what the sequoias lack in depth, they make up in breadth. You see, the roots of a sequoia tree, they begin going down searching for water. They don't go deep. They go wide and they search for the roots of another sequoia. And when they find the roots of another sequoia, they interlock. They interlock with the other roots, and they can do this with another 50 or 100 trees. So up top of the earth, it looks like there's 100 trees. They're not. If you go deep under the earth, they're all interconnected, interlaced, interlocked, integrated, interconnected with each other. A storm can destroy 1 tree, 2 trees, not 100 trees. It's impossible. And that was the secret. When I read about this, I remembered the verse, Yeshaya Hanavi, Isaiah says, Yemei ha'etz, Yemei aki, Yemei ami. The Jewish people are the sequoias of history. We're the redwoods of history. So what's the secret of the longevity of the Jewish people? And the answer is, look at the sequoias. On top of the surface, different personalities. Every tree has its own flavor, its own unique character, its own unique dimension. But above the surface. But if you go deep down, ki'ish echad, belev echad, all the roots are interlocked, interconnected with each other. That nobody can destroy. The Sfasema says, we say in the Haggadah, Shaloi echad bilvad, amad aleinu l'chaleseinu. So he says, the only thing that threatens to destroy us is loy echad, when we're not echad. Shaloi echad, the absence of echad, the absence of oneness. And echad, the Maharal says, is 13, the numerology of 13, the same numerology like ahava, like one. And in Eruvin, page echad, 13, it says, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. You can have different views, different perspectives. You need to have different perspectives. It's like in a good marriage. Do a husband and wife, if they're Jewish, always agree? Chas v'shalom. It's a mitzvah in the Torah, Eseloi ezer kenegdoi, a help against him. The Netziv says she disagrees with him and she saves him from his own ego. We don't have to agree with each other, but we need to be able to trust each other, support each other, be here for each other. That's the oneness. The secret of the sequoia is the secret of the Jewish people. Beneath the surface, even if there's so many differences, but to be able to appreciate that innate oneness, that innate power. That's the power of its indestructible eternity. I have to tell you, literally yesterday I got this email from a friend of mine. It was such a moving story. I have a friend, a colleague. His name is Rabbi Eliezer Chitrik. He lives in Nuremberg, Germany. He's the rabbi of Nuremberg. Now, many of you, when you hear the word Nuremberg, you associate it either with the Nuremberg trials, 1946, of the top Nazi officials who were tried in Nuremberg after the war, or you remember the Nuremberg rallies. The Germans used the city of Nuremberg as the main location of their rallies, which were designed meticulously to inculcate the Reich's ideology in the hearts and minds of the German people. In 1935, Hitler Yamach Shemai had them pass the Nuremberg laws, which revoked the citizenship of all German Jews. They couldn't be German citizens, and began the systematic oppression of the Jewish people. Then came Kristallnacht, November 8th and 9th, 1938. And in one night, 2 nights, the Germans torched 1,400 shuls, sent 30,000 men to concentration camps, murdered 90 Jews, beat mercilessly thousands of Jews, looted shops, vandalized homes and shuls in that infamous Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. There was an amazing, beautiful shul in Nuremberg called Adas Yisrael, the Congregation of Israel. Simply one of the most beautiful shuls in Europe, and there were many beautiful shuls in Europe. And they torched it. Now, we don't have so many pictures of Kristallnacht, but this, they brought Nazi photojournalists to record the atrocities up close. And the pictures were hidden for 84 years. They were just discovered a few weeks ago by a granddaughter in the home of her grandfather, who was a Jewish soldier who liberated Germany in 1945 in the end of the Second World War. And he went into Nuremberg, he retrieved these pictures, and he left them in his home. She just publicized these pictures, so you see how they torched the whole shul and burnt all the svarim. It's very, very tragic pictures up close, very rare. 84 years later discovered. But here's what happened. That night, as the shul was going up, about to go up in flames, a German boy, age 10, ran into the shul, and he saw a beautiful golden Hanukkah menorah made out of pure gold. He stole it, and he brought it home. He wanted it. He liked it. Okay? He kept it in his home since. One day his father sees this golden menorah and says, "What's this?" He says, "I stole it from the shul." His father smacked him and said, "Go give it back." There's nobody to give it back to. There was not one Jew left in Nuremberg. They either fled or they perished. The menorah remained in his home for 84 years. A few weeks ago, Rabbi Eliezer Chitrik, who's the Chabad rabbi of Nuremberg, Germany, and the rabbi of Nuremberg, gets a letter in the mail. A German writes to him, and he sent it to me by email. A German writes to him and says, "My uncle stole the menorah. I'm the nephew, and I decided I want to return it." He says, "Sure, come." And he brings Rabbi Chitrik this year the menorah that he stole the night of Kristallnacht, November 38, in Nuremberg. And he sent me a picture of him holding the menorah, and the man says, "I hope you can accept this as a gesture of peace and friendship, wishing you lots of success." And he explains, this menorah was always in the house, but he never thought of returning it. A few years ago, he was in Zurich, and he met a Jewish family by the name of Weiss. Mrs. Weiss came from Nuremberg, and when he heard about the real suffering of real people under the Nazis, it touched him. And he said, "It's time for me to do my little part and give back the menorah to the people it belongs to." Rabbi Chitrik shares with me that this year, he's going to light the Hanukkah menorah in Nuremberg on that very menorah that was last seen in 1938 in Adas Yisrael in Nuremberg. And I asked him how that felt emotionally. And he said to me, he wrote, he said, "I want to tell you something. If you were a fly on the wall when the Nazis torched that shul, what would your feeling be? Your feeling would be that the story of the Jewish people and of Judaism has just gone up in flames. In the flames of the sadistic hate and violence of the Third Reich. That would have been your feeling. The story is coming to an end." He says, 8 decades passed. And this Hanukkah, that very menorah is going to burn brighter than ever. And millions of Jews in Nuremberg, in Israel, in America, the world over, will light flames of hope, of faith, of love, of optimism, of unity, of emunah, of connection. So he says to me, he says, Rabbi, why? Sometimes you feel like your light has been suppressed, hidden, concealed, stifled, but it never disappears. It resurfaces. Look at this menorah. And when you look, when I was watching the picture, it was so moving to me because it really, in a very small way, that little gesture, that picture, just captures so much of the history and the truth of the Jewish people, who, like the sequoia trees, never, ever, ever could be obliterated, despite the light often coming so close to being extinguished. And when you ask, what is its power? Certainly the faith, the hope, the resilience. But one of the greatest powers is the power of hakel, the power of achdus, the power of avas Yisrael, the power of people having that innate sense of connection that no differences of opinion can obliterate. So be able to celebrate on such an evening this element of unity is really very thrilling. It's a privilege. It's what the Jewish people need. I'm going to tell you a little story that happened this week. For me, it was a sad story. I'm not sure I should say it, I shouldn't, but I think I should say it. And it's really connected to the theme of the night, which is Yutas Kislev. As you know, Yutas Kislev is the day when the Baal HaTanya, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the author of the Shulchan Aruch Harav and the Tanya, one of the greatest luminaries in the Jewish world, was liberated from Tsarist imprisonment. Why should that be celebrated 224 years later? Why? I mean, it's a nice thing that he was liberated. The answer is because this wasn't just a personal event. The reason he was thrown into prison is because he was teaching what we call today Pnimiyus HaTorah. Pnimiyus HaTorah means the soul of Torah, the depth of Torah, the spirituality of Torah, which the Baal Shem Tov articulated and revealed and emphasized, the inner dimensions, the psychological, spiritual, soulful dimensions of Torah and mitzvahs. And one of its deepest teachings is understanding who a Jew is. So here's the story. I don't know how many of you follow martial arts. Some time ago, some Hanukkah, a few years ago, I was talking near Brooklyn College. The president of Brooklyn College was there. She's an Irish, wonderful woman. So she comes over to me. She sees everybody's fressing latkes and donuts like there's no tomorrow. Okay? And they look at. So she tells me, Rabbi Jacobson, what's this tradition of all this oil and sugar and now, I didn't feel that giving her the Talmudic explanation. The oil was supposed to burn for one night, but it burned for 8 nights, and therefore we submerge our donuts for 8 years in oil, and then we submerge our latkes for 8 decades in oil to commemorate the 8 days of the menorah, and we don't stop eating, and every minute you try to finish 8 latkes and then 8 donuts in commemoration of the miracle. For Jews, that's perfectly sensible. Of course, the oil burned for 8 days. Of course we should eat donuts. Like, don't you see the connection? Like, you look at the donut, don't you see a menorah? Oil. Of course. You see the Chashmonayim, right? When you eat the donut, you see the Chashmonayim, you see Yehuda Maccabi, you see Antiochus, you see everything. I didn't think it was going to work with her. She's brilliant, but she's Irish. It's a different type of brilliance. So I decided I need something more simple. So I said to her, as follows. The reason is because Hanukkah represents the victory of the Jewish people against the Greeks. We won, the Greeks lost. The Greeks were into a few things: fashion, design, looks, Olympics, sports, athleticism. So on Hanukkah, when we celebrate the defeat of the Greeks, we eat as many donuts and latkes as possible to ensure that we will never, ever look like them. She's like, wow, that's a deep answer. Yeah, very, very deep. We're all suffering from that answer. But in any case, last Motzei Shabbos, 1 week ago, there was a big, big fight, a good one, known as the UFC, which is basically the Ultimate Fighting Championship. UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship. If you could, join it. It's a good thing. You'll lose some weight. You'll stay out of the house. Your wife might be happy. A lot of good things to come out of it. Anyway, who fought in the UFC? One of the only Jews and Israelis to be part of it. His name is Natan Levy. Natan Levy is a wonderful young man, although his punch is lethal. He's soft, he's sensitive, he's a kind person, he's a good Jew. But you don't want to start up with him in a dark alley or even a bright alley. He's 31 years old. He grew up in France. When his parents got divorced, his mother offered him, do they want to stay in France or make Aliyah to Israel? They made Aliyah to Israel. And he got involved in martial arts. This was a blessing for him because he was a very wild kid. And in school, he wasn't exactly getting the best grades, but this became his outlet. And he studied in Israel, he studied in Japan, he studied in California, he studied in Las Vegas. And he did very, very well for himself. And he's one of the top fighters. And he had a big fight last Motzei Shabbos, and he won. He did very, very well. And his opponent was not easy. It was quite challenging. When he finished, he regained world-renowned acclaim. They interviewed him. And the interviewer asked him, what is your opinion about Kanye West and his anti-Semitic rhetoric, especially day after day, praising Hitler, and every day comes up with another gewaldige anti-Semitic chiddush. So Natan says, what's my opinion? Tell him to come here. Tell him to come here. I'll work everything out with him. Making comments on Twitter is not going to get him anywhere. Let him face me face to face. You make fun of Jews? Come, let's fight it out. And he says, I tell that to all the anti-Semites. Come here, brothers. Come here. Don't be afraid. You say Jews are ducks, and Jews are mediocre, and Jews are weak, and Jews are frail. Come, take me on. I'll teach you a thing or two. And then he says, listen, life is too short to hate. And I pity all those who have dedicated their lives to racism and hate and bigotry. And all I can tell you is I will fight for the Jewish people. I will fight for Israel. I will fight for my brothers and sisters. I will not tolerate any bullies. And if you bully anybody near me, be careful, because I'm going to find you. That was his message. And he said, I'm a Jew. I was born a Jew. I am a proud Jew, and I will fight for the Jewish people forever and ever. And it was moving, because this was a platform that was not very Jewish. It wasn't Borough Park. It wasn't Flatbush. It wasn't Lakewood. It wasn't even Marine Park. It was a very public platform. And the fact that he spoke with pride and dignity about the Jewish people, about Israel, was very moving. Why am I telling you this story? I want to tell you another little side of the story that shouldn't be a big focus, but I want to share it with you. I have a friend who's very close to Natan. And right before Shabbos, he sent me a text. He said, I want to cry. I said, what happened? He said, I told Natan, I sent him a WhatsApp. I said, I want to tell you something. A person like you is usually not followed in Orthodox Jewish websites. They're not so, some people are into martial arts, but it's not usually, the gefilte fish, kugel, jalapeno herring, cholent discussion of from websites. But this time, they're all reporting you. Everyone is posting your video. You made a massive Kiddush Hashem for the world. And everyone is so proud of you. And go to all the Orthodox websites. And he sent him the links to be able to look at these websites and feel that all of the Jews, even people he's not familiar with, people who wear different types of head coverings, are proud of him. He wanted to give him that feeling. And he sent him the link. So I also went to the link to check it out. And I'm looking at the links, and it's all nice stories. And then you have in the websites hundreds of comments of people who have a lot to do. You know those comments? right? Comment after comment after comment. So I was reading. Natan reads all the articles about him, and then he sends him back a message. And he wrote one line, and he said, it's sad for me that the way they identify me is as a Chiloni. The way they identify me is as a Chiloni, which means as a secular Jew. It's sad for me. That was it. I'm looking at his response, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't understand. Technically speaking, he is a Chiloni. He didn't come with a yarmulke. He doesn't put on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. I'm not going to talk about Rashi's tefillin at the moment, right? He didn't come to the martial arts with a streimel, or with a bekesh, or even with a Barcelino a hat, or Bechlal with a head covering. I mean, technically, he's a Chiloni. It bothered him. It hurt him. Because he was reading on the comments. I read the comments, stupid comments. Why are you publicizing a Chiloni? He's a Chiloni, but he did a good job. He's going to get schar. You know, when Jews become Chachmei Chelem and everybody knows how God works and God thinks and who everybody is. Little judgmentalism and the arrogance could make you a little nauseous. And I'm thinking to myself, money he's not missing. Fame he's not missing. Strength he's not missing. Attention he's not missing. What bothered him? It bothered him that in frum websites, he was identified as a Chiloni. And then I realized, the Alter Rebbe used to say in Yiddish, a Yid, nicht will und nicht ken sein abgescheit von Elikus. A Jew, nor can he, nor does he want to ever be separated from godliness. That's what a Jew is. That's what a Jew is. I once saw a letter somebody wrote to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, a letter in the early 80s from Israel, and he wrote, Ani Chiloni, I'm secular, but I want to say this and this. And he wrote back, I hope you will respectfully, I hope you will accept the fact that respectfully I disagree with you on your definition of yourself. Why? It says, the moment God declared at Mount Sinai, Va'atem tiyu li mamleches koyanim v'goy kadosh, you shall be a kingdom of princesses and a holy people. I cannot accept that there is a Jew who's a Chiloni, which comes from the word choil. Choil means mundane, profane, unholy, because the creator of the world has defined you as a piece of kedusha, as a piece of that's who you are. Of course, I can identify myself one way, but that's who you are. That's what's often missing in the conversation today. When you look at a Jew, that's not the definition of a Jew. Yes, he may need to grow in his behavior as a Jew, just like I need to grow in my behavior as a Jew. All of us have to grow. And every Jew ultimately, bal yidach mimenu nidach. But the way you look, what are the glasses? You look at a Jew, what do you see? Do you see choil or do you see kedusha? Do you see an inherent piece of God or do you see, nah, he's profane, but once in a while, no, okay, he comes to a cholent party. We'll take him into the club. The perception, the paradigm needs to be altered. And that's what the Baal Shem Tov taught so beautifully. And that's what the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, and their students taught so brilliantly. They never stopped emphasizing that when you look at a Jew, you look at another person, see the soul, see the beauty, see the goodness, see the depth. Doesn't mean there's no disagreements. Doesn't mean the person can't grow. It doesn't mean there's nothing, can't criticize. It doesn't mean everything, have to justify everything. But it means see the truth. When you look at your own child, some people have children who chose their different paths. What's the first thing when you look at your child? Shouldn't the first thing be, my child? My child, you're my child. There's other things, I know. But that's the first thing you see. When you look at a Jew, what's the first thing you see? God's child. Banim atem Hashem Elokeichem. God's child. The Tanya says, a Jewish soul is a chelik elika mimal mamash. Somebody once asked the Alter Rebbe, which mitzvah is greater in Judaism? Loving God or loving another person? In other words, if you have to choose between the two, v'ahavtas Hashem or v'ahavta l'reacha kamecha, which one? You know what he said? He said, loving another person is a commentary on loving God. They're not two mitzvahs, it's a commentary. It's like you'll ask, what's greater, Gemara or Gemara with Rashi? They're not in competition. Rashi is explaining the Gemara. What does it mean to love God? To love God means to love the imprint of God in every person. To love God means to love his children. Somebody comes to me and says, Rabbi, why? I love you. Your children, I hate their guts. I love you. Your kids, I hate them. Your wife, I hate her. You, I love. Get out of my house. Don't hack me a chinik. If you really love me, you probably love my children too. I understand if you love my wife and not me. That I get. That makes sense. That was a joke. Relax. Maybe not. A Jew goes to shul and he says, V'ahavtos Hashem Elokecho, love God. And then I come out of shul and I meet one of God's children. You, get out of my life. God says, how much do you love me? He says, my family. These are my children. So the Alter Rebbe said, Avos Yisrael is a commentary on Avos Hashem. It's not two separate mitzvahs. One explains and illustrates and brings to life the other mitzvah. And this is the privilege of being here tonight at an event that's dedicated exclusively to bringing Jews together, to inspiring each other with unity and with a proper perspective on the infinite holiness and the eternity of the Jewish people who are forever one. Thank you. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Pada ben shalom nafshi mikrav li ki berabi hayu imadi Pada ben shalom Holy for Islam, Sherebein, Holy for Islam, Sherebein, Holy for Yamanu, Yamanu, Heaven, Shabbat, Yavada, I be Shalom, Mama, I Kehillah, Kehillah, I Kehillah, Mary Sabai, Chakum Achma, Bois Bibu Krov Liboy. Hey, Rock with the Varo Mishem, hey, Shlecha, Hashem, Yitavlecha, Vehu Yechakelecha, Lava V'yitele, Ve'yoyam, Mein Latzavadi, Ve'yam Ata, Hey Me'ata and Mekim, Toiri Deim Li'ved Shachar, Hayaban Sheidamim, Damim, Baba, lo yamem mechetzu, I lo yamechzu, imagen, al sheidamim, I damamim, damamim, Ba'ani
L'chaim, my dear friends, L'chaim. I want to send love and blessings to each and every one of you. The schus of this Eis Ratzon of Achdus and Hakel and Yat Kislev. Hashem should shower each and every one of you with blessings, health, happiness, prosperity, nachas, the fulfillment of all of your heart's desires materially and spiritually, b'toiv hanirav hanigla, in the most revealed and manifested way, with bracha and atzlacha ad bli dai. L'chaim, 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 l'chaim. B'toich klal Yisrael, l'chaim. Oscar Wilde once said, the best feeling in the world is to do something anonymously and then have somebody find out. We all know what he meant. Anonymous aher, anonymous ahin. But one person at least should find out about it. And I thought of that line when I came across what seems like a very enigmatic and even disturbing medrash on Parshas Vayeshev. The Medrash says in Yalkut Shemaini Rus, Amar Reb Yitzchak said, if Reuven would have only known how much publicity he got in the Torah because he wanted to save Yosef, he wouldn't have let the boy go into a pit. He would have picked him up, placed him on his shoulder, and brought him back to Yaakov. Ilu hoya yoideya Reuven, Torah machtiv alav vayishma Reuven vayatzileyu miyadam al kseifoy hoya matino yamalich meiliche etzel aviv. That's almost the verbatim quote of the Medrash. Reuven didn't know. He didn't know that God had a hidden photographer. The Torah paparazzi was there, watching it. He thought it was just a little family dispute, like Jewish families have disputes in some desert. They got into a fight. They wanted to kill Yosef. He said, don't kill him, throw him into a pit. If he would have known that one day, 3,000 years later, this story would go viral on WhatsApp. And every shul this Shabbos is going to read, Vayishma Reuven Vayatzilei Miyadam. He wouldn't have done a half-baked act. He would have done it right. Next, the Medrash says, if only Aaron would have known the publicity he got. When Hashem told Moshe, Aaron won't be jealous. V'roacha v'samach belibo. He's going to see you. He's going to rejoice in his heart. If he knew that the Rebbeinu Shalom was watching, he wouldn't have greeted Moshe Rabbeinu with a smile. He would have come betupim u'b'mechaylos. He would come with a band. He would come with drums and tambourines and 8 cats and all the great singers and renowned talents in the Jewish world. They would do a whole concerto greeting Moshe Rabbeinu. Yamim al yamei melech Taisef. But he didn't know. Next, Ilu hoya yodeya Boaz. If Boaz would have known that he would have gotten publicity when he was gracious to Rus, a poor woman, a Moabite convert who was broke and penniless and came with her mother-in-law Naomi, the first and last time in history a daughter-in-law chose voluntarily to follow her mother-in-law. Where you go, I go. Where you sleep, I sleep. Where you die, I die. Where you live, I live. Where you're buried. First and last time that I know in recorded Jewish history. And she comes back to Bethlehem. She's penniless. She goes to Boaz fields like the poor people to take the shirayim, the leket, the shikha, to pay the remainders of the grain, of the fruits, of the vegetables that falls on the ground that the poor people were supposed to allow to take. And Boaz is gracious. And Boaz offers her to eat. And he tells her to dip the bread in vinegar. Vayitzpot lo kali. He even gives her roasted grain. That's like today's kokosh cake. Babke. Roasted grain. He gave it to her. So the Medrash says if he would have known the publicity that his kindness got, he wouldn't have given her roasted grain. He would have given her rib steak, sushi, Chilean sea bass, London broils, well done. A golim patumais hayamachila. Ungestopte behemoths he would give her. Stuffed meat. He wouldn't give her some grain, a couple of vegetables, some little tvua. He would have given her the best of the best, but he didn't know. He thought he's being nice. He didn't know the Rebbeinu Shalom is taking pictures. Shmuel Hanavi is going to write it down in Rus. We're all going to learn about it 3,000 years later. He didn't know. I read this medrash and I'm like, Rebbeinu Shalom, really? Is this your opinion of Reuven and Aaron and Boaz? It's all about publicity. Mamish. They say there was once a Jew, Yom Kippur. He would get very inspired from the Kol Nidre sermon. He was very wealthy. And when the rabbi would finish Kol Nidre's sermon, he would always make a big pledge. So the first year, he pledged $1 million to the shul. Shul needed an expansion. They came to him after Yom Kippur. He says, I'm not giving it. They said, you pledged? He says, Yom Kippur, I was inspired. I changed my mind. They said, you made a public pledge. Take me to court. They took him to court. He had the best lawyers in America. He was a rich man. He won. The lawyer said he had a weak moment. He said $1 million. There's no signed contract. There's nothing. Fine. The next year, after the Kol Nidre sermon, he was moved to tears. He says $2 million for the shul. Day after Yom Kippur, they call him. I'm not giving the money. You said, let's go to court. They go to court. They spend another $100,000 on a lawyer. He wins. It was a pledge. It was a weak moment. He was inspired. Third year comes around. After the speech, he says $3 million for the shul plus lawyers' expenses. Don't we all believe that there's some things you do, even if it's not on WhatsApp, even if it's not on social media, even if there's nobody taking pictures? For example, saving your brother from death. For example, feeding a poor widow who has nothing to eat. Really? If Boaz would have only known that the Jewish paparazzi are recording, that would have motivated him. He didn't know, so he did a poor job. Same with Aaron. If Aaron would have known, he would be remembered, then he would have greeted Moshe nicely. Now it was half-baked. And Reuven, strange. There's an incredible Hasidic insight on this that comes from the Chidushei Harim. The Chidushei Harim was the first Rebbe of Ger. His name was Rabbi Yitzchak Meir Alter. Rabbi Yitzchak Meir, they called him. He was a student of the Kotzker Rebbe. And then he became the founder and the first Rebbe of the Ger Hasidic dynasty. Gur is not far from Warsaw. Passed away in 1866. And he captures an insight very briefly, but an insight that is really, I think, reflective of one of the primary teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov student, the Maggid of Mezrich, whose yahrzeit is Yutas Kislev, 250th yahrzeit this year, 1772, 2022. And the Chag HaGeula of the Balatanya, what the Balatanya and his students taught. And the Chidushei Harim says the truth is, one aspect of the insight I already found in the Al-Shich, Reb Moshe Al-Shich, who was a 16th century great sage in Tzfas, one of the great commentators on the Tanakh, the Al-Shich, Reb Moshe Al-Shich. But the Chidushei Harim puts it a little bit with a different twist. And they say as follows. Reuven, Boaz, and Rus all did something incredibly gracious, kind, moral. But none of them went all the way. They stopped in middle. And they didn't stop in middle because they weren't good people. They cut themselves short. They took a short stop because they had inner ambivalence. They had inner fear. They were affected by a split, by a dichotomy, a lack of certainty that didn't allow them to take it all the way. Take Reuven. On one hand, Reuven's gut told him, you have to save this boy. They're going to kill their youngest brother. We will never forgive ourselves for this act. Whatever you think about Yosef. That was one part of him. But Reuven was also a pensive child. Reuven was also somebody who doubted himself, and he said, but maybe my brothers are right. Maybe if all of them are of the opinion that Yosef deserves to die and they'll throw him in a pit, maybe they're right, maybe I got it wrong. And you know what? If I do save him, what are they going to say? They're going to say, you're just trying to protect your own skin because you're the oldest and you're going to get the blame. You have no courage. You have no conviction. You're the oldest and you're frightened for your own skin. You're not ready to take a position. All of these voices played a role in his decision, and therefore he said, you know what? I'll play it safe. They won't kill him. They'll throw him into a pit. And in the meantime, I'll find an opportunity. I'll schlep him out of the pit. I'll bring him back to the father. Of course, when he came back, it was too late. Yosef was sold into slavery. Reuven cried, Hayela deinenu va'onani ba. Take Aaron. Aaron wanted to go greet Moshe with drums and tambourines, with a parade, with marching and dancing. But Aaron also was ambivalent. He thought, what are people going to say? Oh, come on. He must be jealous. He's older than Moshe. Moshe is his baby brother. How would you feel if your baby brother, who you used to pamper and babysit for, and threw tantrums while you were babysitting because your mother went to the wedding? How would you feel if your baby brother suddenly became the quintessential prophet and ambassador of God to liberate the Jewish people? Aaron, you must be dying inside from jealousy. The only reason you're dancing is to flatter him because he has the power and you want to be on his good side. So Aaron thought, you know what? They don't know the truth. I'll play it safe. I'll just go out. I'll give him a kiss. I don't have to bring out the concertos. I don't have to bring out the big guns. And Boaz was a judge. Boaz was a rabbinic figure. Boaz was a Rabban Shel Kol Bnei HaGoyli, was a shofet. He thought to himself, if I show extra graciousness to Rus, I invite her for a big spare ribs meal, what are the people going to say? What are the Yachnis and Yentis on WhatsApp going to say? Boaz, she's trying to help a poor woman, or there's other romantic interests involved? Boaz, there's only one poor person in the whole Eretz Yisrael who you could feed spare ribs to? Nobody else? I'll bring you my first cousin, Chaim Yankel the Schnorrer. He would love spare ribs. Oh, Rus, the Greise Tzaddik. He's doing tzedakah on Rus's cheshbon. The Violet, she's in his house. She's sitting in the dining room table. You know how it is. And the moment it goes out on WhatsApp, you're done. Right? I told you about the comments on the website. You're finished. The next thing he knows, that there's a sign on every mikveh in Flatbush and Borough Park and Williamsburg about Boaz. His daughters are not going into the seminary. Certainly not Beis Yaakov. His sons are not going into yeshiva. So Boaz said, you know what? Let's keep it safe. I'm an innocent man. But with people, it's very hard. I'll give her some fahakta grain. We'll roast it to make it a little better. I'll give her potato chips instead of spare ribs. Potato chips, that's the equivalent today. They all stopped short. Says the Medrash, listen to this. If Reuven would have only known that the Ribono Shel Olam took note, how much Hashem valued and cherished their gestures, how much Hashem appreciated the little bit that they did do, what they had in their heart, to the point that the Torah says, Vayishma Reuven vayatzileu miyadam v'ra'acha v'samach b'liboy vayitzpat lo keli. If they only had the awareness of Hashem's perspective, that Hashem took note, Hashem put it into the Tanakh for all of eternity, that would have given them the push, the dachaf, the courage, the stamina, the vigor to go all the way, not to remain emotionally constipated in their kindness. How true is it about so many people? People need to be appreciated. People need to be valued. They have to know how important their words are, their deeds are, their thoughts are. In fact, I would say that's what makes great leaders. When they know the power of their actions, they know how meaningful it is, they know how valuable it is. That's what they need. They didn't need the publicity so that I or some other person should look and say, psst, psst, psst. Aaron, you're a good guy. Aaron, psst, shkoyach, 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 shkoyach. That's not what they needed. Internally, they needed the inspiration to believe in themselves, to believe that if your gut is telling you, save this kid, I don't care what the world says, go and save the child. You stand up for that child. You stand up for that child who they want to kill. I don't care if everybody says you're a shaita, you're a fool, you're a coward, they're going to blame you. Your brother is coming to Egypt. You know that your brother is humble. You know that your brother stutters. You know that your brother doesn't want the job. Give him the confidence. Celebrate him. Boyaz, you know how much Ruth suffered. She lost her husband. She lost her father-in-law. She's alone in the world, came from aristocracy, had nothing. A righteous woman who sacrificed everything to join the Jewish people. So there'll be a couple of yachnas who say, you heard. Agolim batomois. But they doubted themselves. They didn't know that Hashem in heaven is like, wow, 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 wow. So they said, who am I? And maybe I have bad intentions and it's maybe not good. And they cut themselves short. You know, we see it so often with people. We know sometimes there's the right thing to do, but I hold back. I'm not going to give the hug all the way. I'm not going to give the kiss all the way. I'm not going to give the compliment all the way. I'm not going to embrace you all the way. I'm not going to demonstrate warmth all the way. You're going to say I'm a meshugana. I'm too emotional. I have issues. What am I taking today? I'm not so stable. Why am I not cold? Why am I not detached? Why are you taking a stand? Who made you the king? I hold back. It's important. They needed the feedback. They didn't have the feedback. People need feedback. Think about yourselves. I'm sure in the last 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years, there's one person who did something for you, who told something to you that changed your life for the better. Maybe when you were 5, maybe when you were 12, maybe when you were 20, maybe when you were 30. There was one person who may have done something for you or told you something that changed your life in a positive way. Now I want to ask you a second question. Did you ever tell that to them? Did you ever go back to them and share that with them? Think about it. Many people know that the answer is no. And I'll ask you why. You'll say, what do you think about it? When I finish a speech, right? So Jews come over. That's the way they do things. Many of them start off with the same words. I know that you don't need my compliment. I know that you probably don't care for my compliment. And I know that my compliment probably means nothing to you. So now I'm not going to talk about my own levels of insecurity. That will do with my therapist. I have one set up after every event. But people are afraid to give that feedback. And what happens? People don't know what they're doing. They don't appreciate. So the Medrash continues. When they did mitzvahs, the prophet wrote it. Today, who writes it? Rabbi Yitzchak says Eliyahu Hanavi and Mashiach and Hashem signs. Don't make the same mistake that our forefathers made. Sometimes I say, who am I to make the telephone call? Who am I to stop the fight in our family? Who am I to stop the conflict in our community? Who am I to have positive influence? Who am I to be successful? Me and the Oman. But if you only knew how Hashem looks at it, your attitude would change. Don't be afraid of your light. Our therapists tell us that many of us are afraid of our darkness. You're afraid of your skeletons. You're afraid of your demons. You're afraid of your ghosts. That may be true, but I want to tell you something that we're more afraid of. We're afraid of our light. People are afraid to shine. People are afraid to be successful. Who am I to be fabulous, to be successful? Who am I to have an amazing marriage? Who am I to have an incredible relationship with my children? Who am I to finish Shas? Who am I to have an incredible relationship with Hashem? Who am I to have an impact on the world? Who am I to be gorgeous inside or outside? Who am I? Who am I? Queen Elizabeth died September 8th, 2022. Queen Elizabeth II. So I was reading up about her. She once went to a performance on the West End in London with her mother, the Queen Mother. The Queen Mother happened to be in a bad mood that day. People are in bad moods. Even the Queen Mother could be in a bad mood. So she lost it. She snapped. And at some point she looked at her daughter and she says, Elizabeth, who do you think you are? Her daughter looked at her and said these words, who do I think I am? The Queen, Mommy, the Queen. And I'm like, Geschmack. There's a deep message there. Sometimes the Yetzer Hara comes to me and like Esav says, Miyata, Anaselech, Lumiela Lefanecha. Who do you think you are? Atipus Ruche. Who do you think you are? And you have to respond and say, who do I think I am? The Queen, Mommy. The Queen, Mommy. You could do it in a New York accent, I don't care. It sounds better in a British accent. This is not arrogance. It could be it's not arrogance. It's understanding that Kol Yisrael b'nei Melachim hem. The Mishnah says in Shabbos. In Zohar it says Yisrael iskuru Melachim. You're not only a prince, you're part of the king, the queen. Eved Melech Melech. The Gemara says in Shabbos, Mamlech es koyanim b'goy kodesh. Chelek elikam imal. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you're not? You're a child of God. You're a princess of God. You're the queen, Mommy. You don't help the world by hiding your light. Don't be afraid of your goodness, of your power, of your holiness. When you shine your light, you inspire me and us to shine their light. When the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, was in prison, they sent him a psychologist. This is 150 years before Freud. But they sent what they called then a psychologist, a doctor, to examine his personality. Because he was being accused of trying to overthrow the Tsar. The Tsar was Paul I. It's 1798. And the psychologist interviewed the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, the founder of Chabad, in prison. And he came out. And they said, no. And he said, the man has a desire for something he could never fulfill. The prosecution devoured this information. They said, you see, he wants to be the Tsar. He wants to overthrow Paul. He wants to be the Tsar. This is a desire he can't fulfill. How is a Hasidic Rebbe from Lyozhna in Belarus becoming the Tsar of Russia? How? It's not happening. He knows it's not happening. He has a desire, he can't fulfill it. That's what the psychologist identified. This was fodder for the prosecutor. So they asked the Alter Rebbe, the defendant. You would think he would look at them and say, you guys are cuckoo. You guys are tight mashigah. I want to be the Tsar of Russia like you want to be a kangaroo. In news, I mean, he wouldn't say that, obviously. But he didn't say that. You know what he said? He said, he's right. He's right. Ich will Malchus. I am seeking Malchus, royalty. Aber nicht der Malchus von der Tsar. Malchus the Ein Sof. I am not pining for the throne of the Tsar. I'm pining to be a conduit for the royalty of divine infinity. Malchus the Ein Sof. That's what I'm yearning for. I'm yearning for to be a conduit for the glory of God that's manifested in the world. That's what I answer. Esav says, who are you? You say, La'avdecha Yaakov. That's who I am. 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 That's who I am That's why it says in Pirkei Avos, Dama l'mayla mimoch, ayin roya, oizen shemas, v'chol masecha b'sefer nichtavim. There's an eye that sees, there's an ear that hears, and all your deeds are written down in a book. So most people understand it, that just as Google follows you everywhere, and you could never get away from Google, right? So Google was named Google because G, God. So the founder of Google was God. And he sees and he hears and he records, and everything is synced constantly, your medical records with your taxes. So the IRS is going to get you from here, your doctor is going to get you from there, your therapist is going to get you from there, Apple is going to get you from there, Google will get you from there, and then Waze will finally finish you off. My brother told me he stopped using Waze because he was going to the cemetery, the Montefiore Cemetery in Queens. He put them on, and when he came there, it said, "You have reached your final destination." But the way the great Hasidic masters explained it, open your hearts, is a little different. You remember when your first child was born, and you bought a new notebook, and every moment he made progress, you wrote 3 pages in your journal. You remember? Once you had a few children, that tradition was thrown out the window. You're just trying to keep your head above water. But number 1, maybe number 2, if you're really lucky, number 3, if you have a good therapist. But usually number 1, right? He turned over. And you describe how he turned over, which side, who he looked like when he turned over, which leg went first, which hand went first. You went into the store, he looked at the candy and he made a comment. Why? You have nothing better to do with your life? The answer is, yeah, you have nothing better to do with your life. You know why? Because she's your child. Every movement you write down in the journal. You celebrate it. Wow. He stood up. She stood up. They smiled. He said his first word. He said the cutest thing in the world. She said the most adorable thing. The hug that she gave me was priceless. That's what you do. Says in Pirkei Avos, V'chol ma'asecha b'sefer nichtavim. The Balatanya writes in Tanya chapter 41, and they made a beautiful song on it. V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav. Hashem is standing over you even though he's in the whole world. And he's looking at you and examining your kidneys and your heart to see how you serve him. And people, they misunderstand it. They think he's saying that Big Brother, it's like George Orwell, 1984. Big Brother is standing over you and like, I saw that, you Ganev. I saw that, you Ganev. He's saying the exact opposite. God is your greatest fan, your mommy and tati. He is your greatest supporter, your best friend. Everything he writes down in his journal. You saw what Vaira did? Oh, what did she do? You saw what she did? She moved. She thought. She spoke. She overcame that struggle. You saw what Chaim did? He overcame that temptation, that addiction. That goes into the journal. The Medrash says, don't think it's not written. What Reuven did was written. What Aaron did was written. What Boaz did was written. What you and I think, say, or do is written. It's celebrated. It's valued. It's cherished. Don't be afraid to go all the way. Don't be afraid to give all the love, to give all the warmth, to give all the generosity, to give all the kindness, to give all your authenticity, to show up to life with your full presence, not with half your heart and half your head tied in chains because of my traumas and wounds, which are normal. But that courage to be able to really show up in life with that conviction of Hinei Hashem nitzav alav. I was invited by Renewal to do a Shabbaton with kidney donors. This was in the Hilton in Stamford, Connecticut. So I went for Shabbos. I get up to speak. It's a big auditorium. There's 800 people in the crowd. Everyone is a kidney donor. I stand up and I started my speech with these words. I feel like a balmum. I feel like a blemished defect. I'm the only person in this room with 2 kidneys. I don't know what gives me permission to be here in this room. Everyone is a kidney donor. Fascinating. And listen to this. Besides one, everyone gave a kidney to somebody they don't know. They don't know who it went to. Imagine. And I want to tell you something else. The next day I was on a radio show. And the interviewer tells me, I find that Orthodox Jews are obnoxious and rude and they don't have any mannerisms. I said, what do you mean? He said, in Costco, they never hold the door open. They always skip lines. They always block my driveway. Yeah? In the elevator, they're rude. Their kids make messes. They don't clean up. They just don't have mannerisms. What's your opinion? So God helped me, and I said, listen, I'm not going to defend if somebody is impolite or somebody doesn't hold the door open. Their behavior should be improved, and I'm a big fan of mannerisms and politeness and kindness and generosity. But I just want to tell you one thing. How much percent of America are Jews? 2%. And how much percent are religious Jews? From all of America, it's not even 0.25%. So now, if I had to ask you statistically, how much percent of kidney donors in America should be the impolite, obnoxious, rude religious Jews? You would say 0.25% of kidney donors are Orthodox Jews. 18% of kidney donors in the United States of America are Shomrei Torah Mitzvah. So I said, listen, I'm not, a fact, I said, I'm not telling people should be polite, but I know what, if I have to choose between somebody holding the door open in Costco and somebody giving their kidney to save my loved one's life, I know which stock I'm going to invest in. I know what I'm going to choose. So be respectful. I'm not saying no, there's nothing to correct. I'm not saying we don't have to enhance our behavior. I'm not saying sometimes our education needs help. I'm the first one to say it if you watch my clips. I get in trouble. I'm not saying that. But when you demonize a community, 18% of kidney donors in America, that's a fact. I didn't make that up. He was quiet. An old woman calls in. You know, women could be sharp, especially when they hit a certain age, right? And their husband doesn't interfere. They once asked a 106-year-old woman, what's the value of living to this age? She said, less peer pressure. This woman calls in and she says, I didn't know where she was going. She asks the man, she says, who is the most polite nation on earth? Which nation behaved in the most aesthetical way? Clean, polite, romantic. Everybody knows the German people. But it didn't stop them from sending 1.5 million children to the gas chambers. So she said, being cordial and polite is nice, but don't turn it into a deity. Don't turn it into a deity. The most important thing is kindness where it counts, like protecting a person's life, like not harming a person. She said, I don't think that community has what to be embarrassed with when it comes to saving a life. As I'm walking out from the conference, the renewal conference, a young man comes over to me. He's 33. He donated his kidney. And he tells me, Rabbi Wari, I never shared this story. I grew up here in New York. I was a mischievous kid. By the age of 14, I was thrown out of 8 yeshivas. He says, I'm in the Guinness Book of World Records. By the time I was 15, I was thrown out of 10 yeshivas. I said, why? He said, everybody wanted me. They were all fighting over me. And then they got to know me and they said, it's time for a new one. At the age of 14, my father called me and I says, I don't know what to do with you. You're driving me crazy. I'm paying for a ticket to go to Israel. Go figure your life out. Now, where's the seichel of that father? Weiß ich nicht. But who asked me? You know what I mean? He sends this boy on a plane to Israel. No yeshiva. So the boy goes to Bnei Brak. What do you do in Bnei Brak? He goes into a shul. The Slonim shul in Bnei Brak. In the Slonim shul in Bnei Brak, it was already late morning. Davening finished. There was one man in Talis and Tefillin, age 95. His name was Reb Asher Arkovich. He was a partisan in the Second World War. Lost his family, remarried. His wife was ill for 10 years and she died. And now he was a widower, 95 years old, without children, sitting in the Slonim shul and davening 4 hours a day. He sees this 14-year-old boy and he says, "Was tistada? What are you doing here?" He says, "I was thrown out of 8 yeshivas. My father shipped me off to Israel." He said, "What are your plans?" I said, "I don't know." Reb Asher looks him in the eyes. He told this to me. And he says, "Ingala, young man, I'm going to tell you a word from Reb Mordechai of Lechovich. The Heilige Lechovich Amagid is one of the great Hasidic masters, known as the Lechovich Amagid. It says in Ashrei, Lo hoidia livnei ha'adam gvuroisa v'chvoid hadar malchusa. Literally it means, God wanted we should notify people about His strength and His glory. But the Maggid of Lechovich said there's also another interpretation. Lo hidia livnei ha'adam. It's important to notify people. Gvuroisav. You should notify every Ben Adam of his or her strength. Uchvoid adar malchusay, his or her glory and dignity and beauty and royalty and nobility. So he says, young man, wherever life takes you, never forget your strength, your power, your glory, your beauty, and your royalty. He told me, I left shul. I got into another yeshiva. 6 months later, they threw me out. Vayishlach, Vayetze, Lech Lecha, all the parshias. Miketz, you're done. He went into another yeshiva. 6 months later, expelled. He now had 10 yeshivas on his resume, 15 years old. He told me I had nowhere to go, no family. His father threw him out. No yeshiva, no community, no infrastructure. The pain was so deep, Rabbi Jacobson, I decided to take my life. One morning, I traveled to Jerusalem. He described to me the building, the address, the street. I went up to the roof. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. I went to the edge of the roof, and the pain was just overwhelming. I said to myself, I jump, and in a few seconds, it's over. Standing at the roof, watching thousands of Jews walking on the busy street in Yerushalayim, I have a flashback. A year ago in Bnei Brak, the partisan, Reb Asher Arkovich, tells me, Lo hidia livnei adam gvoroisa v'chvoid adar malchus. Always know about your strength and glory. And I think to myself, I never found out about my strength and glory. Before I jump, I have to find out about my strength and glory. He walked back, he came down, and he decided to find out about his strength and glory. And he looks at me, he says, here I am today. I'm married. I have 3 children. He lives in Muncie, New York. He has a big business. He's very, very wealthy and successful. He donated his kidney to save somebody's life. And he's there at the renewal conference sharing with me the story. And I think to myself, as he was sobbing, I think to myself, Reb Asher Arkovich, the partisan, a 95-year-old Jew, could have never known what he did for that child. He has passed on since. He could have never known that those words in a Bnei Brak Slonim Meshul literally saved a life. How could have he known? He couldn't have. But he said it without an agenda. He had no protection. He had no money. He didn't say it because he had to. He was an old, lonely, broken man, but apparently not so broken. And that boy told me, he said, I could feel his sincerity. And the sincerity touched him. And it changed his whole life. And I learned from that. I say to myself, why are we sometimes stingy with love? Why are we sometimes stingy with warmth? Why are we sometimes stingy with embracing people? We also have a mitzvah. Every person you meet, make sure that meeting does not end without you notifying them about their inner confidence, strength, power, nobility, dignity, divine royalty, and aristocracy. If it's through words, if it's through actions, if it's through thoughts, even if it's through body language, which is sometimes the most impactful, even if it's through your facial expressions. This is what the Balatanya means, Vihine Hashem Nitzav Alav. Cherishing every move you make, every breath you take, every step that a person takes in life, every machshava, every dibur, every maisa. Reuven, Boaz, and Aaron didn't know. How could they? We also don't know when we do something. How could we? You can't read the story of your own life. All you can do is live your life. However, when we're aware of this truth, it helps us take our thoughts and turn them into actions. And it allows us to transform ourselves from the person I might have been to the person I am. L'chaim. Thank you.
I don't know if it's okay, but it's okay if I give you a hug.
You give me a hug? Why not? I just come on, hugs.
Here.
What's your name?
After a nigun, we will hear some divrei Torah from Rav Agoin, Rav Rikeach, and all the Rabbonim that are with us. A special thank you for Rabbi Jacobson for being with us and inspiring us. Thank you very much. We have with us Rabbi Reuven Boshnik from the big shul on Ocean Avenue and Avenue U. A very special, good speaker. One time he spoke in my shul, I remember. It was 12 noon. After Shachris, Musaf, Kresatoiro, everybody wanted to go home already. He started to talk. Everybody stayed there and 1 hour. He's not going to talk for 1 hour, but very great speaker. And after that, we're going to have very special song by Eitan Katz. Before we go into the next speaker, I want to tell you about Eitan Katz. Simple thing, don't worry. First of all, Eitan Katz is a Kohen. Everybody should know. Eitan, a Kohen Katz. If I would know it, I would write it on the flyer. Eitan is the name of Avraham Avinu. Why Avraham Avinu called Eitan? Because Eitan means strong. And Avraham Avinu, he started the new movement of Judaism against the entire world, against his father, against his family. So he needed to be very strong. Eison Oyo Avraham, the Rambam writes. So Eitan is our past, the beginning of us. In Dikduk, in Hebrew, in grammar, Eitan, may we ever learn Hebrew language. Eitan, it says, when you're learning, you have names for every rule. Eitan, it says, Oisiois asidiois. Eison. Eison is the future. Because when you say in Hebrew, I will do, or we will do, or you will do, you use the letters Aleph, Yud, Tov, Nun, Eison, E'ese, Na'ase, Ya'ase, Ta'ase. Aleph, Yud, Tov, Nun, in grammar, it's the future. Eison, you're the future. When you read in the Torah the word the future, what it means, you have Rosh Teves, when you read, it says Lamed, Ayin, Lamed. What is Lamed, Ayin, Lamed? I'm trying to explain to people, it's very hard when I'm teaching a small class, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 1-on-5. Leosid lovoi. Leosid. We want to call the time of Moshiach, the Geula, Tchias HaMeisim. Beloshon HaTorah, they call it Leosid. The next one, the come, the future. So Eison is the future. Also, Eison has to do with Leosid Lovoi, with the Osid. So this is the biggest bracha we can give Eison. We should be able to sing when Moshiach coming, together with the big music that's going to be there, the whole dancing of the world. By Leosid, the future. Huh? Oisi Estania, yeah, we can come to it. Right, yeah, good. He says Eison is Oisi Estania. The Sefer Tanya was printed at Yutis Kislev. This celebration we're doing at Yutis Kislev, the Tanya was printed with the name of the Balatanya, Bashgocha Potis. We call the Alter Rebbe, the older Rebbe of Chabad, the name that everybody call him is the Balatanya. Even though he made also the Shulchan Aruch. He called also the Bala Shulchan Aruch. And also he has the name the Alter Rebbe, because he was the first Rebbe, but the name, the accepted name, that everybody call him is the Baal HaTanya. That what happened, because sometimes it's Ashgacha Potis. People call a name, they eat it as a nevuah. Am Yisrael as a nevuah. They're calling somebody by a name, it's like a nevuah of Am Yisrael. Because the Tanya is maybe the biggest chidush of the Alter Rebbe, of the Baal HaTanya. So the Tanya, the Eson is also the letters of Tanya. Tov, Nun, Yud, Aleph. It's the same letters. Because that is bringing the future. Nachal Eson. There is a whole explanation. There is a whole explanation of the Baal HaTanya, and Eson today in Chitas in Tanya is explaining a whole deep explanation about Nachal Eson, the river of Eson. In Egla Rufo, it's all very deep explanation, exactly on the Tanya. The Tanya is divided 2 days. Every day you read a piece, you can finish in a year. The same as there is Chalukas HaShas, there is Chalukas HaTanya. You read every day a piece. So exactly the piece of today and yesterday is talking about the explanation of Eson. So the simcha that brings the person to be more strong in himself. That is megale the koyach of the nitzois, of the spark that every person has in himself, that he cannot ever put it away. This nitzois eson that in him. Okay, now we're going to hear a few divrei Torah from our guest rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi Hendel. It's a schus to share some. That's okay. I'll be shorter. It's a schus to share some divrei Torah. Tough act to follow in any which direction, whether it's Rabbi Eitan singing, rabbi-wise, divrei Torah. Rabbi Hendel asked for a couple of divrei Torah, so it's Hashem Yitzliach Darki. Yesterday, we read a pasuk. Yaakov Avinu says to his children, "I want you to get rid of all of Elohei Nechar, throw away all of the foreign gods." Throw away all the foreign gods? What foreign gods were Yaakov and his children like collecting? Even they were in Haran. Where did they pick up foreign gods? So it's explained in Midrashim that Elohei Nechar also refers to an alienation from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Elohei Avodah Zara means a strangeness. When a person comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and they feel estranged. Avodah Zara, Elohim Acherim, that there's an acher, an otherness to God. But we're here, and it's not by coincidence. The Parshas Vayishlach gives birth to the week of Yutes Kislev. So we celebrate the Baal HaTanya, the Yortzeit of the Maggid of Mezrich, the Baal HaTanya, because there's no better words than what Rabbi Eitan was just singing. Kikar ve'lecha adavar me'od, which is the mission statement of the Tanya, can be best defined in a story. Told at the Middle Rebbe's Bar Mitzvah, the Baal HaTanya's son, Rav Dov Ber Shniori, Rav Dov Ber of Lubavitch, during his Bar Mitzvah all week, they were talking about Tchias HaMesim. So through the weeks discussion, the weeks for Farbregen, the weeks get-togethers and discussions about Tchias HaMesim, all of a sudden somebody got up and said, the Rebbe, they meant the Baal HaTanya, is Mechai Mesim now. Everybody looked at him. What are you saying? Mechai Mesim now? What do you mean? Because there's nothing is dead, is lifeless as a person's day-to-day. There's nothing that can be possibly as lifeless as the human mind. And the Rebbe has come to us with his teachings, with his Torah, with Chassidus, Sefer Tanya, to bring the dead back to life, to show that it's really, really not so far away. A gathering like this, a gathering where we get together, we feel a little bit more chiyus, a little bit more life. a little bit less estranged from the Ribono Shel Olam, the Master of the world. And when we're a little less estranged from the Master of the world, we're less estranged from ourselves, less estranged from our families and friends, as Rabbi White alluded to. Well, we can contact that point of chiyas, that point of life. We're mechayim mesim now. We're mechayim mesim now. And that, the tremendous chiddush of the Sefer Tanya, where he says, look, you can open the Sefer. Like Kedushas Levi, the Berditchever said, it astounds me that they fit such a big God in such a little book. But that you can open the Sefer and get in touch with yourself and get in touch with the Master of the world. You're able to contact something more. You're able to do Tchias HaMesim right here, right now. And this is the antidote, the month of Kislev. The month of Kislev encapsulates within it the entire battle against darkness and coldness. We'll end with this one other story about the Baal Shem Tov that we know, the Maggid and the Baal Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, are a continuation of this idea. That one time the Baal Shem Tov was going with his chevra, with the Talmidim, in a wagon. They went on many strange trips. He directed them to go to a certain lake. In the Ukraine, the peasants were very, very religious. The first frost, what they would do is they would start carving crucifixes into the ice. The Baal Shem Tov starts watching them, humming along the tune that they're singing, and starting to shuckle back and forth. Everyone thought this was quite odd. Of course, the crucifix, the Shesi V'erev, was a symbol of our suffering. Is it possible you should shuckle? What does that mean? After a couple more minutes, the Baal Shem Tov says, they'll come back into the wagon. They get back in, they go back to Beis Midrash, and one of the braver Talmidim says, Rebbe, what was that about? And the Rebbe said, I want you to know something very, very deep. We see it on the way to shul. I was walking this week, and I saw one of the puddles was already starting to freeze over. The source of all purity, of all Torah in this world is water. Water is compared to Torah. Ein mayim ela Torah. But when it freezes, it can become a place of avodah zarah. It can become a place of estrangement. How many people are suffering? Tzarenu from Torah that isn't taught in a way of Tchias HaMesim. That Torah that isn't taught in a way of life. How many people are suffering from it? It can become a place of avodah zarah. It's the blessing I want to give to it, you, me, and everyone, as we're lightly likras Chag, as we're getting close to the day of Yud Tes Kislev. So we should also always stay fluid. We should always stay Tchias HaMesim dik. We should stay strong like Eitan. Be able to taste that future in the now. When we open the Tanya, we open Sefer Chassidus, we taste the world that's coming. Mitzvah Hashem, we should merit the hafitz ma'inosecha, ma'inosav, ma'inoseinu, achutza, the well springs of who we are, the well springs of Kadosh Baruch Hu, the well springs of who we can be, very, very soon. B'bias Gol Tzedek, Kula Hashlema V'mitis, V'mir V'minu.
למענך אלוהי קיינו עשה ולא בואי לנו ונהיה עמידתנו דלים ומרקים למענך לא בואי קיינו עשה ולא בואי לנו ונהיה עמידתנו דלים ומרקים. Everyone together join me. הנשמה לך והגוף לך חוסה על המלך הנשמה לך היה בשעה